This is the story of HK from the O. HK is T.Roy's brother. HK is abbreviation in short for Headshot King. This is the tale of how HK met his tragic end. You have to respect a man who went on a rampage to avenge his brother's death. While violence can't be condoned, his loyalty and determination were admirable. Everyone wishes for a brother like HK. Respect. Rest in peace, O Block HK. HK story. Remind me of a story of drill rapper Cedron Doles, aka Sh0ter Shells, or aka Mr. Death of 150 of Black Mob over East Side Chicago, whose brother also was killed while he was in jail. And once he was released, he had to go on rampage and kill his ops, 7 of them, till he meet high tragedy from NLMB and ABK. For the HK though, the story has similar traits to a certain extent.
Ain't got to do to this my crib. You talking about my daddy? They ain't got no shit to do with me on phone. This my house. You talking about my daddy? You gotta come back when he come back. I'm not finna leave you here when he. Man, he finessed you on phone now. You got finesse. You got finesse. You got finesse. You got finesse. You gotta get up out my crib. I just talking.
He was shot and killed after attempting to rob a civilian with Makadoo 600. The truth is, robbing civilians usually won't get you more than a couple $100s and maybe a watch. It's broke behavior. On top of that, it carries far greater risk compared to targeting someone already in the streets, since civilians will report it while street figures often won't. Exactly. Most civilians aren't foolish enough to walk around with thousands in cash hanging out of their pockets like some street guys do. It's crazy to think O Block lost Big A and Heck to civilians within about a year, then later lost Bond to out-of-state conflicts. But the people who killed Big A allegedly weren't just random civilians. They were members from out west Chicago who reportedly had no issues with O Block. Big A confronted them aggressively and they responded. It was a situation that could have been avoided. It's still surprising that for years people believed Wooski and his neighborhood were responsible for HK's death, when in reality it was a civilian. I remember a video of some white guy filming O Block, pointing at the gates and saying, "This is where Wooski jumped over, and this is where HK tried to fake it and got shot." Fans can get carried away sometimes. Anyway, that was just a trailer. Hear the full story. On November 24, 2017, life in O Block began much like any other day. People moved about their routines, conversations filled the courtyards, and the familiar energy of Parkway Gardens carried on. Among those seen that morning were HK, Lil D, and Makadoo, 3 figures well known in the neighborhood. Surveillance cameras later captured the trio as they made their way inside the towering 6436 building within Parkway Gardens, a high-rise that had long been a centerpiece of the area. The initial footage seemed uneventful, but additional clips that surfaced afterward provided fragments that, once pieced together, revealed a far more consequential story. At some point, HK and Makadoo decided to head upstairs. It was there, in one of those chance encounters that can shift the course of events, that they crossed paths with a man who did not belong to O Block. Reports suggest he wasn't a rival or an enemy, but simply someone stopping by to see a friend who lived in the building. The man's appearance, however, stood out. He wore a set of flashy gold chains that immediately drew attention. To HK and Makadoo, seasoned affiliates of O Block and its feared faction, the GetBackGang, this was an opportunity. Allegedly, the two confronted him, likely with the intent to rob him of his jewelry. They may have assumed their reputation alone would be enough, that the man would simply hand over what they demanded, unwilling or unable to resist 2 figures known for their presence on the block. Yet, what they thought would be a straightforward move instead spiraled into something neither of them anticipated. That miscalculation proved to be a costly mistake. The encounter quickly spiraled out of control. As HK and Makadoo confronted the man, he caught sight of something that shifted the balance entirely, a firearm tucked inside one of their jackets. Realizing the danger he was in, the man bolted toward a nearby apartment, slamming the door shut behind him in a desperate attempt to put a barrier between himself and the two affiliates. HK, unwilling to let the moment slip, rushed forward and tried to force his way inside. But before he could breach the doorway, the man armed himself. Pulling out his legally owned handgun, he shouted that he had no ties to gang life, making it clear he wanted no part in whatever they intended. Seconds later, he opened fire. The shots landed with brutal precision. HK was struck twice, one bullet tearing into his thigh, another piercing his stomach. Reeling from the impact, he stumbled back, and the situation shifted from confrontation to survival. Makadoo grabbed hold of him, and together they attempted to retreat down the stairwell. In the chaos, Makadoo raised his weapon and fired wildly back toward the apartment from the doorway, not aiming but sending rounds as cover fire in a desperate attempt to keep the man at bay. A witness later recounted that Makadoo, seeing his friend falter, initially tried to carry HK down the steps, supporting his weight as they descended. But the injuries were too severe, and HK grew heavier with every step. At some point, Makadoo could no longer keep him upright. He let go, and HK collapsed. This moment, whether an act of necessity or desperation, would later spark widespread speculation online. Many began to claim that Makadoo had abandoned his close friend in his final moments, a belief that spread quickly across social media and further fueled the story of that tragic night. Meanwhile, the sound of gunfire had already drawn attention. Residents of Parkway Gardens, all too familiar with violence, called the police, and officers soon flooded the high-rise. They were told that one of the shooters had been gravely wounded. When they reached HK, whose real name was Hakeem Murray, they found him barely clinging to life. Emergency responders rushed him to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where doctors fought to save him. Despite their efforts, the damage was too great. At 8:53 p.m., Hakeem Murray was pronounced dead, another young life lost to the cycle of violence that had long haunted O Block. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, the man who pulled the trigger managed to slip away from the chaos. While residents of Parkway Gardens reacted to the sound of gunfire and police began closing in, he quietly exited the building and made his way several blocks away to another apartment complex on South Michigan Avenue. There, he concealed the weapon, trying to put distance between himself and the scene. Yet instead of fleeing further or going into hiding, he made a choice that surprised many. Not long after, he voluntarily walked into a police station, explained what had happened, and handed over the firearm he had used. Forensics later confirmed his account. Ballistics testing showed that the weapon he surrendered matched the shell casings recovered inside the 6436 building. During the investigation, the man also participated in a lineup and positively identified HK as one of the individuals who had confronted him that night. With physical evidence, eyewitness testimony, and his own cooperation, the authorities were left with a clear picture. Under Illinois' Mutual Combatant Statute, a law that recognizes self-defense when both parties engage willingly in a violent confrontation, the case was ruled justifiable. The man who had fired the fatal shots was cleared of wrongdoing and walked free. The tragedy of that year weighed heavily on O Block. Within the same stretch of time, both HK and his brother T.Roy had lost their lives to gun violence. For many, it was a cruel twist of fate. After all the shootings HK had allegedly carried out in retaliation for his brother, It was not a rival gang member who took his life, but a stranger, an outsider who claimed he was simply defending himself. Yet the cycle of bloodshed did not end there. Even with HK gone, the chain of retaliations persisted. Members of O Block turned their sights toward another figure tied to their pain. Get Right, also known as Man Man, a member of STL-EBT, often referred to as Tuka Gang. Within the street politics of Chicago's South Side, names carried weight, and old scores were rarely left unsettled. To O Block, HK's death was not the closing of a chapter, but another reason to strike back, ensuring the cycle of vengeance kept turning. Some people, and also especially HK family, think Makadoo was the actual killer, the accidental killer by friendly fire. People only think that because Makadoo 600 ran when left, HK and HK's family blamed him for it and dissed him as soon as he died. But Makadoo 600 actually did try to help him. Makadoo was shooting back and even tried to help HK bringing him downstairs, but he only left because cops was coming. Wonder whatever happened to the Donnie guy who killed HK. T.Roy died February 2017. His brother HK then went on rampage, caught 4 bodies from June 2017 to September. He allegedly was in Poppy of Taekwon World, killing in June. Colby Mack and FBG Brick, July 17. FBG Brick, STL-EBT, and his cousin Kobe Mack TW was shot and killed by GetBackGang. HK was also in Biko Terry Berry /TB hit also on same year. It was actually on L.A. Capone 600 Day. By the start of October 2017, O Block is the real Get Back. They get back 4 bodies in less than 6 months, damn near single-handedly with Headshot King and GetBackGang, HK and Makadoo 600. Now we're going to the death of HK and how HK family, friends fall apart with Makadoo 600 and started to blame Makadoo 600 for their son's death. Here the HKO Block and Makadoo 600 situation. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the HK and Makadoo situation. It is well known HK died in a robbery gone wrong, but yet there has always been speculation about what really happened. Fast forward. Makadoo 600 will later be arrested and died in prison. Makadoo passed away while behind bars in 2023. It's not quite clear if he died over natural causes or probably committed suicide, or he got stabbed. But according to Makadoo 600 peoples, he got killed by Cook County apparently. This happened way more than y'all think, in hospitals and heavily populated. In jailing systems kill people, or people commit suicide or die over natural causes. After Makadoo demise, HK family was celebrating that Makadoo died, and even O Block members didn't post Makadoo after his death. There were many things were said. Do you think HK family is only mad that Makadoo left HK to die? It is probably more than that. I read HK Freedom of Information Act, and it says 2 guns were used in his death, a 9mm and 10mm. I find it hard to believe that 3 O Block members against 1 civilian and civilian leaves unscathed, and they just ran and left him like that. 3 to 1 makes no sense. I believe what really happened was HK, Makadoo, and Lil D pressed a civilian, and things went left, and both the civilian and Makadoo by accident shot HK. Realizing what he did, they tried to drag HK out down the stairs, and realization hit them. Given the situation, they decided to leave their homie. This would make sense why HK family feel as if Makadoo had some to do with his death. No way you have 3 Oblak members and they just let HK die like that against one civilian, and there's 3 of y'all unless thing went left quick. Like you hit your homie by accident and now you scrambling trying to figure out something. My opinion, and no trolls or people trying to be funny, just a thought I had. Feel free to drop the comment, it's just open for discussion. Yeah. So for me, it's either they upset that he left him to die, or they upset because Makadoo accidentally shot him. And the accidentally shot one is starting to make more sense because of how HK family was acting when Makadoo died. I think that if he left him to die, they wouldn't be mad based off the fact Makadoo was sliding heavy after T.Roy died, along with HK, or even more. But it's no way an entire family was just waiting for something to happen to him before they say something. If Makadoo actually left him, like they couldn't even be mad at that. So I'm going with the Makadoo accidentally shooting him. And it makes sense because Jaro City Gucci said one of the BD member got HK, and it was rumored that he got backdoored. So I think that's what happened. Perhaps Makadoo never shot him. HK babe mama was mad how Makadoo left him on the curb like trash and ran off. He then left town shortly after. HK babe mama just try and run with the story for attention, or surprise someone could just kill HK and Oblak. End of the day, HK tried to rob a guy at gunpoint. The guy killed in self-defense. This story of HK Headshot King from Oblak carries a number of deep, painful lessons that go beyond just gang conflicts. They touch on human loyalty, choices, and the cycle of violence. Let me break it down in detail. First lesson, loyalty and brotherhood. One thing that stands out is HK's fierce loyalty to his brother T.Roy. His retaliations show the powerful bond between siblings, the idea that someone will go to extreme lengths for family. In a tragic sense, it reflects a human longing to be loved and defended so strongly. However, it also shows how loyalty without direction can lead to destruction. Instead of honoring T.Roy's memory in a way that built life, HK channeled his loyalty into death and retaliation, which only shortened his own life. Second lesson, the cycle of violence. The story is another reminder of how revenge perpetuates endless violence. HK avenged his brother by catching multiple bodies, but each killing only invited more pain and loss. When he was killed, retaliation did not stop. Others sought payback again. The lesson here is stark. Vengeance can never end the cycle. It only adds fuel to it. Each new death becomes another reason to kill, keeping whole neighborhoods locked in grief. Third lesson, risk versus reward in street choices. HK died not in a war with rivals, but in a botched robbery attempt of a civilian. This is important because it shows how poor decisions, even small ones, can have irreversible consequences. Robbing a civilian carried little reward, a couple $100 and a watch, but enormous risks. The man was armed and legally justified in defending himself. HK's decision in that moment brought his story to a premature end. The broader lesson, short-term gains in the streets often carry long-term costs that outweigh any benefits. Fourth lesson, perception versus reality. Fans, rumors, and even family members shape different narratives about HK's death. Some blamed Wooski, some thought Makadoo shot him by accident, others believed it was a setup. The truth was simpler. HK tried to rob the wrong man, and the man defended himself. But speculation shows how stories in the streets often grow into myths, legends, and blame games. The lesson here is how dangerous misinformation can be. It fuels more anger, more distrust, and more division, even among supposed allies like Oblak and Sh000ter. Fifth lesson, friendship, betrayal, and perception. The situation with Makadoo is also telling. By most accounts, he tried to help HK, carrying him, shooting back, and then fleeing only when police arrived. Yet HK's family blamed him, and when Makadoo later died in prison, they celebrated. This illustrates another painful truth. In the streets, perception is everything. Even if Makadoo didn't betray HK, The mere suspicion shaped his legacy. The lesson: when trust breaks down, even among friends, brotherhood can crumble into blame and bitterness. Sixth lesson: the cost of reputation. HK's nickname, Headshot King, was born out of his feared skill and violence. His reputation gave him clout and status in O-Block, but it also shaped his decisions. When he and Makadoo saw a man with gold chains, they probably assumed their names alone would make him fold. Instead, the reputation that made them feared also made them reckless. The lesson: reputation built on fear is fragile and often becomes a trap. It pressures people into choices that end up destroying them. Seventh lesson: the fragility of life. Perhaps the biggest lesson is the fragility of life in this environment. T.Roy, HK, Big A, Heck Vaughn, names that carried weight in O-Block, were all lost in quick succession. Some fell to rivals, some to civilians, some in other cities. These deaths highlight how quickly lives are cut short, often in their teens or early 20s. The tragedy is that many of these men never had the chance to outgrow the streets, to reflect, or to build something different. The lesson: the streets consume youth, potential, and futures, leaving behind grief and broken families. Eighth lesson: accountability and consequences. Finally, HK's story reminds us that actions carry consequences, even when people believe they are untouchable. He survived multiple retaliations, gained status, and embodied the GetBackGang. But one wrong move, trying to rob the wrong man, ended everything. The man who killed him was released under mutual combatant laws, his action deemed self-defense. The lesson: no matter how feared you are, every decision has weight, and accountability always finds its way back. Closing thought: the story of HK is tragic not only because of how he died, but because of what it represents. Loyalty twisted into vengeance, potential loss to reckless choices, and a cycle of violence that traps whole communities. It's a cautionary tale that while street life promises respect and reputation, it almost always ends in prison, betrayal, or an early grave.